Thank you. Ms. Duncan, could you call roll call, please?
Sure. Okay. Chair Villa-Gomez,
Present.
Vice Chair Penn,
Present.
Ms. Stark,
Present.
Mr. Durar,
You're on mute.
He's there.
You're muted.
Can you?
I believe he might have stepped out of his room. I don't
He's
see
there.
him.
He's there.
He's there.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, so you wouldn't let me unmute when I wanted to, so I finally got back around to it. Thank you.
Mr. Fulton, right here. Ms. Johnson,
Present.
Mr. Scales, Ms. Williams, and Ms. Wilson.
Present.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan. Well, I believe we need to adopt our June minutes. Would we like to discuss them first?
If everyone is in agreement, I'd like to move that we accept them as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Linda. Could we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Well, let's have our take. I think Ms. Carlin will call and see if everyone approves.
Chairperson Villa-Gomez,
Yes, I approve.
Vice Chair Penn,
Yes.
Ms. Stark,
Approve.
Mr. Durar,
Approve.
Ms. Johnson,
Approve.
and Ms. Wilson.
Approved.
Okay, our June minutes are approved. So I believe we can move on to the chair's updates. I promise to be brief today, but I do want to just note that we had a wonderful time at the Juneteenth celebration. It was quite fun to sit most of the day with all of the staff from the city of Winston-Salem. I know Ms. Carlin was there, many were there, and Ms. Beverly joined me, and she had many, many great discussions with people from the community who came up to our table. One lady in particular for me, it's been very exciting. She's followed up. I gave her my phone number. So many of you might know Ms. Deborah Miles. So when I return next to Winston-Salem, I'll be meeting with her, and she has many wonderful things she wants to share with our committee and of course with the city. So things related to the arts as well as churches. And so I'm looking forward to getting to know her, but she is incredibly enthusiastic. And so I think the relationship that I'm going to be building with her and all of the wonderful stories she's going to share with me, I think that just represents one of our committee's main goals, and that is to really build and grow our individual relationships with people in our community who are eager to participate and share their stories and really support us in our efforts. And so that's my update, but I think it was wonderful overall to really be there with our city staff supporters and just really be there to meet everyone who was willing to come to our table and really engage with us. The other Juneteenth update I have is that we now have more websites within the city of Winston-Salem website. So our committee now has a link to the videos, the introductory videos to our program. And so I just urge you to look at that and to encourage people in the community to look at those videos. And below those videos, there are very clear instructions about how to engage with us and how to share documents. And then also for the community at large, understanding best practices for urban history and oral history. So it's just very exciting that that website with our videos is up. I know that Miss Linda made a video. Council member CPO did the introductory video. And so I just want to thank everybody on the committee and everybody from the city who really supported that. It's just very beautiful. So, so go see it. Then my last update, and I promised to be brief today, but of course, you know that I sent out a number of readings last week, and I apologize for sending them so late. It was a little bit tricky for me, the end of June, between finishing off summer school and then coming out earlier to San Diego than I had planned to assist my mother with some health issues. But I just want to note that, one, I'm very appreciative of Ms. Linda for reading carefully through all the documents and highlighting the one thing I think I would like to stress today, and I do hope we can have some conversation today, but she did remind all of us that one of our responsibilities is that beyond collecting the artifact photos and the oral histories, that we are commissioned by the city to eventually write histories related to African Americans involved in all of the different sort of categories, whether it's businesses or the arts or churches. And so I want to remind us all to look back at that, and over the next few months, I believe we might want to come together and start to think strategically about how we will write those histories. So I think we might want to be strategic and think about writing, maybe begin to write one of those narratives that eventually will be posted. And that is a large task, but it's a wonderful challenge. And I look forward to working with each of you who might want to write. I obviously know that some of us won't want to write those narratives, but partnered writing of history is something I have loved to do, and so I will be really blessed when I collaborate with those of you who want to write. But some of us might want to be more engaged in doing the readings and collecting the evidence and thinking about what would be appropriate beyond our oral histories that we will collect and beyond the images of artifacts that we will be collecting. We might want to think about other appropriate sources that can guide us and that we can use to really write beautiful narratives that will do complete justice to all the lived experiences, the great achievements, the celebration, and of course the great tenacity and strength of our people in the history of our city, and the way that African Americans survived and thrived in the face of such challenges. So we haven't spoken too much about that. And again, I really am appreciative of Ms. Linda for bringing that to our attention through her email response. And lastly, what I would like to say about the readings, which of course include our own city bill, the bill from the federal government, and then various other readings that I think are helpful, is that all of this will help us to see our work within our own local context. And then as we look at our work as it compares to, say, what the city of Greensboro is doing and our wider regional state developments, recent history in relation to defining what reparations mean and acts of supporting reparations for African Americans, whether it is symbolic but very public in official apologies, or for actual monetary and other kinds of things that will help African Americans move to achieve and gain equity and equality, and really have that transitional justice, and of course the restorative justice, and also the protections for moving forward. And so many of those documents I have sent, they speak to us about that, some of the best practices within our own state, and great examples, and then nationally, and then internationally. And I think, you know, our efforts to, as our own committee works to make sure that moving forward, African Americans will always be protected and always will have access to everything that is good and promotes the well-being of other people in the country. And so I think that is so important. It's not, reparations are not only about the past, but they're about equity and thriving and equal rights, full equal rights, and dignified living within the present, and then full protections for our people for the future. So I just encourage you to think about those readings over this next month, and think about where we are, what we've experienced in our histories past in the African American community. What are we experiencing, good and bad now, and what do we need to do for our people to protect their futures, to protect the children and the young people moving forward. And so that is the last of what I will say. But now I would hope that other people might make some comments. And Ms. Linda, you might want to summarize and expand upon your thoughts that you shared with us so graciously last week about the readings.
Sure. It was really a very minor thing, but I read the document about the possible reparations and the apology and all of that. And I think, I think the apology is appropriate. I thought it was good. I only had problem with one word. I said it was very minor, and that was the word slum, when they were talking about the removal of, I forget what the word was that they used, but it was the removal of neighborhoods for progress. And I just had a problem with that word, because that word has a very negative connotation. And it can also remind people of the word ghettos, not the American ghettos, but the Warsaw ghettos during World War II. Well, those persons were put into those areas and blocked from going anywhere else in the city. It was their neighborhood. They didn't think that it was a ghetto, but the authorities there pushed them into that area and called it a ghetto. So I just thought slum reminded me of the word ghetto, and I just thought we could be a little more creative and come up with a different phrase. We know why it was done. It was done to improve the neighborhoods, but of course, the persons who lived in those neighborhoods were not the ones who created the slums. It was because of redlining and being unable to improve, to get good jobs or to improve their financial situation, and therefore they could not purchase new lumber or whatever it happened to be to improve their home. So I just had again, this is my personal opinion. So if nobody else feels that way, that's just fine. But I just had a negative reaction to that word, and I hope that we could come up in the official document with just a different word. That's all. But I thought the overall document was fine.
Thank you, Ms. Linda. Again, that is such an important point, and I think that we as a committee could be helped with finding the terminology and the context. If we refer to some of the work of my own colleague, Dr. Russell Smith, who's our urban geographer in my department at Winston-Salem State, he's also the founding director of the Spatial Justice Studio. So he's partnered with the city in the past. We've had conferences related to the very institutionalized approaches to hurting African-American communities and neighborhoods locally. And so he really is one of the current experts. And so he has published both scholarly work and many popular media. He's done videos on what has happened systematically, what those racist systematic approaches have been to hurt our local African-American neighborhoods. And so again, I'll send some readings, some of what he's put out there to the committee, because that could be, his work could be a good starting basis for us. We've also had some African-American scholars come who don't live here, but have looked at what has happened to our community in relation to other African-American communities in the country and in the South. And so I'll make sure that I send those readings out, and if people care to read them for our next meeting, that would be wonderful. I also think that those readings could be a good starting basis for those narratives that we will eventually produce for the city's website. So are there other comments or thoughts about any of the readings that I sent out and our official document that we are working off of that supports our committee, the founding of our committee and the work of our committee? Are there any other thoughts? All right, well, I encourage you to use our email also to discuss things between our meetings. So please feel free to just shoot out a couple thoughts if they come to you. And again, I think Linda was very succinct, but what she said to us was very, very important. So often you might just find one or two points, but if you share your thoughts, that could help us all think, refine our individual thoughts and build our sort of collaborative thinking about events and the various issues that we want to highlight moving forward. So if there are no further thoughts or comments on our readings, then I believe we can move to the next agenda item. So I believe Ms. Wanda,
Yes. Chair Villa-Gomez, good afternoon.
good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Great to see everyone. And really, in terms of my updates, we are still working quite diligently internally with trying to make sure that we are projecting what we need to project for the anticipated needs of the AAHI. And so we have been looking at things like any types of budget requirements that may be necessary moving forward in anticipation of eventually being able to establish some type of mechanism for retrievals, for information retrievals. And so we've been working on that and discussing different options. And also I would like to introduce to you, I don't think this particular committee has met our intern, Ms. Myra, she's on here. Myra, would you like to introduce yourself to the committee, please?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Myra Ramirez and I am an administrative intern for the Human Relations Department.
And Myra is a recent graduate of Salem College. She just graduated last month, and so we're very proud of her. She was working with us as an unpaid intern as a part of her school requirements that she needed to fulfill. But now we have her as a paid part-time intern, and a part of her responsibilities will include providing support to the AAHI, whether it's through research or so forth. But we don't know how long we will have Myra, but we're hoping to have her for as long as possible and to maximize her time with us. And so she has already undertaken looking into a few particular possible grant opportunities that have come to our attention by way of our illustrious Assistant City Attorney, Keisha Redd. And so Myra is looking into some of those leads that Keisha has shared with us as a part of our internal committee efforts. So I just wanted you all to know that the inner workings are still ongoing, and we're still quite happy to have the support that we have across different departments in support of the AAHI.
Welcome, Myra.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hello, Myra. And committee, Ms. Myra was with us, and so we got to meet her. Some of us got to meet her at Juneteenth. So
Yes.
it's great to see you again, Myra.
Thank you. It's great to see everyone.
Thanks, Myra. And Chair Villa-Gomez, what I'd like to do is just segue on into city staff updates. I know that marketing has been quite busy, and I really do want to thank Mr. Frank Elliott for all of his hard work in helping to create and develop the virtual orientation piece for the committee. And so, Frank, did you have anything that you'd like to share?
What if I just say, oh, shucks, happy to do it.
Awesome. We really appreciate you, Frank, because that was no easy task that you had.
Well, everybody was real responsive and the talent was wonderful, and it's easy to do good work when you have good material to work with.
Well, thank
It
you.
really is beautiful. The orientation side is really beautiful. It reads well, it's succinct, and I think it really will bring great attention to what we're doing. So thank you, Frank. Thank you so much.
Let me just add that, you know, this obviously, the nice thing about the internet and digital stuff is nothing is fixed in stone, and that orientation can evolve and change. And as people start asking questions, we can add facts, we can modify it as need be. So yeah, we'll just kind of continue to march.
And Frank, would you mind mentioning one of your newer staff additions, because I know that he has been working with Jamie on the possibility of trying to develop the website a little bit more, in particular, looking at our advisory boards and commissions, including the AAHI.
Certainly. So we have a new city web content coordinator. His name is Tom Shivala. And Tom is very adept and rather fast at what he does, which is good because we have almost 3,000 pages on our city website that have to be maintained. But yeah, Tom's got a lot of initiative, and he's kind of been going through things. And as he does jobs for departments and looks at their pages, he starts thinking of how things can be made better, which is a great attribute for him. And so Tom's going to be working with Jamie and developing some better pages. Tom's really good at thinking about how the layman or how the outside person reads something. You know, it's one thing for us on the inside to look at something and think it makes sense, but what's the experience of someone who knows nothing about city government? And that's a good quality to have.
Yes, absolutely, Frank, and thank you. And we've already gotten to know Tom on a limited level, Jamie more so than anyone else, and we can already tell that he is going to be awesome to work with, and he has a lot of great ideas. And so we welcome those and we thank you. And then moving on to the IS side of what we do internally, Ashley, Tom, anything you all would like to update the committee on?
Hey, Wanda, no, I'm probably going to defer. And I'm sorry I've missed some of the meetings in recent months. I'm probably going to defer to Ashley. Other than, you know, we did update our budget a little bit with a little tweak that we provided you last week. But I don't know if Ashley wants to speak to anything going on right now as far as the online applications. You say Ashley's online, or?
Yeah, I'm here. We're still at only 10 submissions on the online form. The last one was on February 8th. Like Tom said, we sent you some budget tweaks, and I sent the latest information I had about Digital NC. So I don't know if this is the opportunity to talk about that, but Wanda and Councilmember Scipio, I think you know where we are with that.
Ashley, if you'd like to share something about that, I think that would be.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if you want me to talk. So Digital NC has said that they cannot partner with a government entity because of, I guess, the way that their grant funding is. They have to partner with a cultural heritage institution. So the only way we would be able to use their site in order to display the digital items that we have collected would be to partner with a cultural heritage institution. So, for example, a university or some kind of organization like that. And they sent us a list of criteria of what constitutes a cultural heritage institution. I'm trying to pull those up if you wanted me to read that for you.
That might be helpful.
Give me 1 second. Sorry.
Sure.
Okay, they said that Digital NC can partner with cultural heritage institutions that fill at least a few of the following criteria. 1, have contact information, a phone number, email, and address belonging to the association and not just held by an individual or individuals. 2, has been in existence longer than 5 years. 3, been incorporated as a 501c organization. 4, hold regular meetings or events. 5, maintain an online presence, like an updated website or Facebook page. And then lastly, operate with some sort of governance structure. In the past, they've worked with college and university libraries, public libraries, archives, museums, historical societies, alumni associations, genealogical societies, and historic sites. And their only other advice was that if we partner with a cultural heritage institution, how that partnership would be structured and how that would look would be up to us and that other organization. For Digital NC, it's just a matter of what name the artifacts get displayed under digitally.
Okay.
I believe.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Can I make a comment, Wanda?
Sure.
So, as you know, a year or two ago, our plan was to, as you know, we got the current temporary online application set up that Ashley alluded to. We've been taking a few application or submissions, but the long-term plan originally was to go off the city IT we would follow our typical standard practice where we write an RFP and we would contract with some hosting firm out there. We went that route, very expensive, very, very expensive options. We came across Digital NC, and they have a great site. It's a great organization. You know, we're in School of Government, Chapel Hill. They got a great setup and office, and I think I see a lot of benefit if we can find a partner to work with in terms of a cultural heritage institution that we could partner with. I'm saying this because I think we'll get a solution for a fraction of what it would cost us to start afresh. Digital NC has been doing this, what we're looking to do as far as online archives, for a long time. They've got a great solution, and for the city to go off and try to find some new package and spend a lot of money when we got this opportunity with the folks at Chapel Hill. So I think it'd be very beneficial and behoove us if we could truly find a partner, again, along the guidelines that Ashley just shared. I'm thinking, obviously, IT costs, to be honest with you, and what it costs to implement a new solution and ongoing. We would save a lot of money if we could partner with Digital NC. And I'm also thinking if we find the right local partner, the right, I don't know what the right cultural heritage institution, we find the right partner, not only could it help us, I'll say financially from a technical standpoint, but it might help us with a great partnership as far as reaching out to the community. So I just would like to encourage that the group, we really try to go down the path of Digital NC first before we step back and try to buy and implement a whole new solution. And I'll just stop there at my editorial. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Tom.
Wanda, could I just ask a question?
Sure.
Ashley, is there any restriction on the size of this cultural institution, or any guidelines on the size of it?
No, there are not. Just the ones I've read, and I can copy and paste that into chat.
Okay.
That was a list.
Okay.
Thanks, Ashley. And what I wanted to do also was afford our Assistant City Attorney, Keisha Redd, to chime in, because I think she had looked into what actually constitutes a cultural heritage institution and how it is that the city may not fit within those parameters. Right, Keisha?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. So the term cultural heritage institution is kind of a very broad umbrella term that houses all of the, if you would, like I said, research institutions, public libraries, universities, historical preservation societies, alumni groups, any of those generally nonprofit organizations founded and organized around preserving the history, culture, et cetera, of whatever its stated purpose is in its guideline, mission, et cetera. So by that definition, a governmental entity cannot meet that definition. And the only way that we would be able to avail ourselves of a service such as Digital NC would be through a public-private partnership with a cultural heritage institution, because that would then allow Digital NC to be able to come in and to provide that hosting. And I won't attempt to explain the IT part of it, but to provide whatever it is they provide, where they house and display and categorize and outline all of the, whether it's pictures, documents, et cetera, that would be part of the collection.
Thank you, Keisha.
You're welcome.
So Chair Villa-Gomez, I don't know if you or any of the members of the committee has any, if y'all have any specific questions pertaining to any of the information that's been shared either in chat or verbally by any of us from city staff? I think you're on mute.
Thank you. So my thoughts would be that the natural alignment, if we are going to go with university or college, would be Winston-Salem State University. Not just because I happen to work there, but because it is our local, historically Black university. And I believe we have some precedents for working with the city. So Mr. Tom Flynn, who is our library's archivist, recorded and I believe digitized many things for the city's Union Station reopening celebration. And he has been a supportive member, not as a direct committee member, but he has been with our AAHI committee from its inception. So it might be worth our while to invite him to our next meeting, and over the course of the next month, I could have some conversations with him about the possibility of being the cultural institution. So those are my thoughts. I mean, we also have the new Winston Museum, so we might be able to partner with them as well. But in my opinion, WSSU would be ideal.
Hey, Wanda. So I didn't want to say it, but I'm glad the chairwoman did. But I think Winston-Salem State would be an ideal partner, not just because of Tom, but also just other capabilities. I'm thinking, we've used Winston-Salem State IT students, for example. We've had them as interns in our IT department. And as this initiative grows in the years to come, there's an ideal opportunity for some IT students in Winston-Salem. So I think Winston-Salem State, I didn't want to say it, but I think it's an ideal candidate and we ought to pursue it. I would support that 100%.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Councilmember Scipio, I think that you might have had some conversation with the other Tom about Winston-Salem State being in a supportive role with the AAHI. Is that sound correct?
Yes, we talked about it. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you. Sorry, I'm a little late joining in. I had another meeting, but nonetheless, we're getting ready to do some wonderful things. At least you guys are, and I'm very excited about it. Yes, I think I will also say that I had always felt that the better of all of the options that are local would be for us to partner with Winston-Salem State because it's an academic institution. It's already doing the kind of archival work that we're getting ready to do. There are resources there. The thing, though, is that there would have to be some type of formal agreement with them through their hierarchy. And that's the thing that would be needed to do. And if your committee decides to pursue that direction, then that would be part of what needs to happen in an official, formal kinds of discussion and an agreement made. I did want you to really think about the other options that are here in the city. Although my preference would be Winston-Salem State, just because they've been so involved in what we're doing, and what we do does impact them and their collections efforts in people connected to Winston-Salem State. Of course, there is the Muse as a museum, and they're wanting to do more around African American history is something that, and be more inclusive in what they do. That's a great partnership. I think at one time for Digital Forsyth or the Forsyth County Library was an option. Yet that's the county, and although Winston is the biggest part of the county, I think sometimes they sort of lose sight of what we need to do for all of our residents here. And we might get lost in what they do. I think it's really important that we think about how prominent we want to be. And of course, I want to be very, very significant in the city. And how do we gain the greatest access to community in terms of credibility for what we're doing? What partner could bring that to us as the state of the art, already knowing how to collect and store and retrieve data. And it wouldn't be like, we wouldn't be a stepchild. I guess that's the thing. I didn't want to be a stepchild to any institution, and yet I don't want to be the maker of an institution also. So, but those are things I ask you to consider and you to ponder the pros and the cons about partnering with another group. Now, it's really important to understand that the internal expertise of the city is going to be exceptionally expensive for us to do long term. And the reason why Digital NC is so great is because all of the systems are already set up. So we'll be tapping into what's already being done around the state. And in many ways, that gives us a statewide presence. And once you're in the statewide presence, you automatically get connected to national and international connections. So I guess I'm a little biased, but I'm going to stop talking about how I see all these things, because it really is up to you to say, that seems like a smart move for us to make. Or you rather for us to do something, or the city to do something different to impact the vision of establishing this archival database that people can download information into, as well as retrieve and have it long term. So I've told you my biases, so I'm gonna stop telling you my biases, and you guys need to think about it. You don't have to make a decision today, but I do know that you need to be very thoughtful about that connection and who we're going to partner with to tap into North Carolina Digital.
Councilmember Scipio, I'll make a couple quick comments. First one is, the systems are expensive, the city staff's not. And thinking about the partnership, we will have to have, if we were to go to the Digital NC, we will need a formal partner of record. Let's say it's Winston-Salem State, and they're our primary partner of record for Digital NC. But that doesn't stop the group from partnering with, say, the museum. And we could have multiple partnerships, and they might play a role in the whole logistics or intake or vetting. So I would just suggest we keep in mind that, well, we would have to have one agreement with one partner, such as Winston-Salem State, for Digital NC purposes. We could still have a lot of other partners and take advantage of that. So I'll just throw that out there.
Thank you, Tom. I love lots of options, because if we can spread our net, cast our net broad, then we'll be possibly tapping into more people throughout the city, state, and nation, because everybody's not on WSSU's site, but they might be on the Muse, or they might be on Triad Culture Arts, or they might be on the archive, or they might be on Regnota House. I mean, if that's the case, you know, that would be beautiful in many ways that, you know, cast our net fairly broad.
Yeah.
And again, Tom, the whole thing about digital NC, I want to make sure we take everybody back to baseline understanding, is that digital NC's huge value to us would be that they already have something in place that would make retrieval and research very convenient and easy, right?
It's convenient. It's in place. It works. It's good. It's a solid solution. It saves us a lot of money, and we can fast track and get rolling much quicker. So, yeah.
Yeah, because we already have the process in place for people to submit information and put information. And would digital NC enhance that in any way, or what we have good enough for that moving forward?
Digital NC doesn't do intake, I will say. So we would have to continue to do all the intake, but they would display it and allow it to be searched and viewed.
There you go. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we took it back to that basic level of understanding so that everybody knows what it is that we're kind of looking at. And Keisha, were you going to chime in?
Yes, I just wanted to point out, in terms of any sort of formal partnership agreement arrangement, the AAHI has the ability to make recommendations to City Council, but there would need to be City Council agreement for AAHI via the City of Winston-Salem via AAHI to enter into a partnership with whomever to do whatever. So if, you know, and not to kind of take over the discussion, but I think a more fruitful discussion may be to identify which entities exist in the community that qualify under that umbrella of cultural heritage institutions, based on the definition that Ashley provided in the chat box, and to kind of maybe come up with pros and cons. We all know that in terms of resources, staff, expertise, you know, Winston-Salem State checks all of those boxes. And as Tom pointed out, that doesn't mean that there can't be involvement through other cultural heritage institutions, but in terms of who the formal partner is, in order to access the platform that Digital NC provides, I think that is the recommendation you would ultimately be making to council, saying, we, the AAHI, recommend that in order to do X, that the City Council enter into partnership with Y for the purpose of Z, and these are the reasons. And I think that would then give council the picture that they need to give the green light for AAHI or the City of Winston-Salem and whichever representatives from the institution that we're looking to partner with to come up with what that formal agreement looks like, with the input of you all, because you're the ones who are kind of building this plane, so we can get it up off the ground. So that's just what I wanted to add.
And so
to get it started, can the attorney's office create a draft as to what, a draft MOU as to what the city requirements might be? And then as we work with the institutions, be it one major institution academically, and then others that would include entities like the archives and Triad Cultural Arts and Muse and whomever else, to have a plan of a program agreement with them to be able to do some stuff. But if we can have what the draft would look like on the city side, that would say, these are the specs that we need to have, then that will give us, and of course, we need it done in about 30 minutes, but yeah, the next meeting, certainly if we could have that in place, I think it will give us some directions to which way to go.
I think we have a jump on that because we did release an RFP last year. Again, when we were looking to quote purchase and build and buy our own solution, and in lieu of digital NC, we literally could take that RFP which is city's requirements. That will be our starting point right there.
Right.
And we have that in place today.
And also, I just wanted to add, Keisha, would you think that the wording would still be appropriate if the AAHI wanted to recommend WSSU as the lead partner? That
Well, so I think what we would have to do is look at the requirements of Digital for Sight. I don't know if it is limited to one partner or if it can be a partnership of multiples. And every entity in the partnership has to meet the criteria of historical, cultural institution, cultural heritage institution, I'm sorry. So it would be a matter of looking at that more closely to see if it has to be a lead partner or if it's just two people or two entities, or if there can be multiple entities. I didn't delve that deeply into it because I didn't anticipate that question, but that would be something that we would look into and make a determination. Because if for some reason there could only be two entities that create the partnership for Digital for Sight purposes, again, there could be any other number of agreements or arrangements with other institutions in the community to contribute to the project. They just wouldn't be included for the digital NC purpose. They would be included for the AAHI information gathering purpose.
Because one of the things we need to be concerned about is that that become an institutional piece, that we still have the community feel. And the institution may not be able to produce the community feel that we're looking for in being out there, boots on the ground kind of thing.
Now, I certainly am not the expert here, but the way I imagine it is if you're looking for a partner, you look for someone or an entity that has what you don't have. And so while we have IT expertise, we may have legal expertise, and we have people who are members of the community in terms of actual formal historical collection, archiving, like the technical expertise, I think is what we would be looking to that partner to provide. And I would imagine that's what Winston-Salem State or whatever entity we ultimately decide to go with, how to collect an oral history, how to preserve documents, how to scan them or how to display them in a format so that the integrity is not compromised. Those would be, I imagine, the types of things that we would be looking for to ensure that whatever it is, like they wouldn't be doing the boots on the ground work. They would be kind of assisting to make sure that whatever we collected, gathered, et cetera, created, was done so in a historically accurate, historically respectful, culturally respectful sort of way, so that the final product is something that we all could be proud of.
I have a question. So in order to access Digital North Carolina, the way we would do that is by partnering with Winston-Salem State?
For a cultural heritage.
Okay. And so we would need to partner with a cultural heritage institution in order to access Digital North Carolina. It makes sense to do that with Winston-Salem State because it's got proximity and it's got access and it's got some other things that gives us an access to Digital North Carolina. And it could actually provide us with other opportunities to partner with different organizations that would bring more to it. Is that kind of the way I need to be thinking about that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
You're on mute.
I tell you, I'm dealing with two different computers. Maybe, I don't know if anybody else is a little confused about what Digital North Carolina does and then what we would then do. And part of my understanding is that people would input data on our website, and then that data then would be sent to Digital North Carolina, that makes it available for anyone to retrieve and to use, to see, and that kind of stuff. Do their research, which we don't have the capability of doing that right now. And is that sort of it in a nutshell, or is there more that we need to talk to about what it also brings to the table?
I think at a minimum, what Digital NC offers, this is the bare minimum, thinking hardware technology, is they have a storage solution. They have a warehouse where they've been dropping all these documents for different initiatives across the state for years. They offer us that warehouse. And for us to leverage their warehouse, which they're willing to let us use for free, will save the city easily $20,000, $25,000 a year of paying some warehouse. So that's a minimum. They also have the application that allows you to retrieve from that warehouse. So we're still going to use the city provided, what Ashley and her team has done, and Frank, all the work we've done on staff. We're still going to use the city intake. We're going to drop it in if we go this route, we would drop it in the Digital NC warehouse. We would use their custom app that everybody else uses to pull out of their warehouse. So they're saving us storage money, I use the term, to store all our data. They're backing it up. They're protecting it. That allows us, I say the IT and staff, Juana's team, Frank, allows us to focus on the intake side, the community side, the websites. So at a minimum, they bring us that warehouse. Now, they also are in that business, and we've had several discussions with Digital NC, and I'm sure they'd be willing to give us advice and assistance as we move along. And then if you think of someone like Winston-Salem State and Tom, we got too many Toms now, but Tom at Winston-Salem State, we might decide you're kind of our partner. Let's face it, they're kind of our partner to get to Digital NC. And maybe we don't ask them to do a lot, or maybe we say we're not going to ask a lot of you, but I'm sure they'd be willing to partner where it makes sense. So the main thing Digital NC gives us is a warehouse to store all our data and a solution to pull it out so we can focus on the front end and quite frankly save $20,000, $25,000 a year at a minimum storage requirements. I don't know if that helps it out, Councilmember Scipio.
Yes, Tom, thank you so much. You guys have been so instrumental in moving this forward. For the committee to know that we really would not have gotten to where we are today if you didn't have the back of the house sort of being built by Tom and his crew. Believe me, a lot has gone into framing how this was going to come to pass, our virtual database. And so and Tom was on board from the very beginning, being so responsive and trying to make this happen. So I really want to say thank you, Tom, and your team for being so instrumental in bringing software, hardware to life. For those of us who don't really know how it all runs in the background, they know everything. They've done so much. So I guess the question I have is, if we were to think about the mechanics, I upload stuff to the city's website, then would the city then download our stuff to whatever the partnership link is to our cultural group? And they then in turn have to download it to Digital North Carolina, or because we are partnered with this cultural group, we just automatically download it directly to Digital North Carolina.
Yeah, I think we can have a one-step process. I don't think we need to have that two-step. I mean, if we implement this solution right, again, I'm more on the technical view, we implement this correctly, a typical citizen is not going to know or even care if we're storing the data in Chapel Hill at Digital NC, if the intake site was written by IS staff in the city, or we farmed it out. If we really do it right, the whole technical piece ought to be seamless. They just know I go to this website to load it up, and I go to this link if I want to pull it out. And but to answer your question, I don't think we're going to rely on Winston-Salem State to be part of our pushing the data. They're kind of our legal connection because we're a local government.
I just want to say, I agree. I think that's right, Tom. And Digital NC has a variety of methods that we can get them these digital artifacts we have. And they said they would work with us and figure out what's best. So no, we don't have to go through the partner. The other thing I did want to mention, in addition to the website that we have where anyone can upload stuff, if you guys are going to think about scanning days or anything like that to go out into the community and get them to scan paper copies or photographs of stuff, that'll be another, collection point. And we can also take that and then upload it over to Digital NC. So it's whatever collection points the committee comes up with, we can take all of those digital artifacts and dump them into Digital NC's storage database, as Tom said.
Ashley, thank you for that clarification. And I will just say that I found that the Digital North Carolina, the various archives of photos and collections, very easy to use myself for research. So when I was doing research for our Union Station permanent public history posters, I used a number of different things from that digital base. And it was easy to either link in directly through them or often through Chapel Hill. But whether or not Winston-Salem State ends up being the prime partner, I think that Tom Flynn and I could reach out to Chapel Hill and find out what they did for their collections, if that would be helpful. And then I do want to find out how we will sort of initiate the potential partnerships. So, I would be happy internally within WSSU to send the letter to whomever. But I think, as a committee, we need to think about the different groups and primary partners and secondary partners. So it might be helpful to have people come in from the different agencies and if they would have an interest. But I think we do need sort of the step-by-step process for how to at least initiate discussions with our potential partners. And again, I'm happy to take on a role there if it's appropriate. I just need to be told what to do. And I believe internally at WSSU, I would probably work with Tom Flynn and our head librarian, Ms. Wanda Brown, because they would know, I'm sure they've done things comparable, and so they would know who to reach out to internally.
That wouldn't necessarily be a conflict of interest for you, would it?
No, not at all.
And I just want to point out, I think maybe some of your questions, Madam Chair, may be answered by the resolution itself that City Council would pass. Because in that resolution, it would identify the entity being contacted, the scope, and it would outline that. And then it would just be up to the AAHI and whomever, either via the chair or subcommittee or however you all decide to divide and conquer, to then go about executing those pieces and know that it's not all on you, because there may be some staff directives in order for, maybe our IT people to talk to their IT people. So you don't have to think about the entire blueprint. That would be coming in the form of whatever resolution that is ultimately presented to and voted upon by City Council. And then it would come back to you all if approved, and then you would execute based on the items identified in that resolution. So for right now, what you would just need to kind of focus on is identifying, the entities within the community that perhaps meet the definition, which ones offer which things, and a recommendation to council, which one you think would be the best. Now, let me just say, these entities are free to say, no, we don't want to do this. So, that's the kind of the benefit of seeing what all is out there and what they offer, because it could be that our first choice isn't we're not someone else's first choice. And so you may then have to go back to the drawing board and say, well, okay, the entity that we wanted to partner with initially isn't willing to do this. Who else is in the community who does this, who offers, like maybe one group offers this thing and one group offers this thing. So we then partner with two groups to get what we could have gotten from one group. I don't know. I'm just kind of, imagining possible scenarios. So I think that's why you do the examination of what's available in the community, but then you make your recommendation knowing that if that first choice isn't available, you then have all of the research completed so that you can kind of go back to the drawing board and say, okay, this is our second, third, et cetera, et cetera.
I think that's a great point. And just to let everyone know, we have spoken with Tom internally, with our internal planning committee, and talking about the other Tom K. And so anyway, Tom has said that he was interested from his vantage point, from his perspective and world, that he would be interested in working with us in this capacity with Digital NC, but he would need to go through his proper channels. He couldn't speak, he said, on behalf of the university. And so he did express an interest though. So it would just be a matter of I guess, them figuring out who they need to get the approval from at Winston-Salem State, if indeed they're interested, number one, and number two, if indeed the AAHI does want Winston-Salem State to be the lead partner.
Wanda, in that light, then, is he also able to get from the institution what pieces need to be in the MOU? And that way, when the city attorney's office gets that document, we have their document, then the two, we can figure out what needs to go in the one single document.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Ms. Joycelyn. And Keisha, if that's something, that you need, or if you have some specifics that you want Tom to work on and provide to you, then, we can facilitate that in our next internal meeting.
Absolutely. Ultimately, it's going to be up to whichever assistant city manager is kind of also involved in this process, because they are the liaison to city council. And so while we can, say this is what we want, ultimately, whatever input we receive about what they feel that is going to be needed in those agreements in order to get it through committee to council and ultimately approved, that's the format that we want to take. So, while I'm more than happy to do that, I just want to say, that in light of the fact that there is an assistant city manager who will be involved in the process intimately. And so because they're the liaison to council, whatever I say is going to be with the understanding that it's not the gospel, because ultimately I'm not the staff member that makes the final decision. I would be working in conjunction with the assistant city manager's office to get that presented to council and approved ultimately.
Right, and we understand that it's just so we can be a little proactive in what we're trying to do.
Yes.
So I just have a question or a thought. For today's committee, is it that do they need to endorse moving forward with Digital North Carolina as a partner to complete the initiative of AAHI, which includes retrieval? Is that what we need to agree on today? And if that is also, if you would give it to, I'm going to say this, give it back to staff to investigate the various partnering opportunities and what that might mean for the city and for our partners, and bring that back to you, because I think that we could talk a lot about this, but I think we really need to get more insights on how to move it forward. And I think we can't move it forward until you guys say, yes, move it forward as a process. I think that was why it was presented today.
Yes, ma'am. That's it, Councilmember Scipio. And also, Ben Rao is the assistant city manager. Would be involved because that's who we're working with now, Keisha.
Okay.
Make sure to include Ben, and he is aware I have briefed him on this, so he would just need to be brought up to date, up to speed, and I'll do that with no problem. So, Chair Villa-Gomez, based on what Councilmember Scipio just said, that would be great for you all to vote on moving this forward, if that's your pleasure.
Absolutely. I was hoping we could do the vote today. So do we have...
Can I quickly mention, this isn't a commitment at this point in time to NC Digital. We're just basically saying direct staff to go research and come back to you with the recommendation. So we're not certainly committing to Digital NC today. You're just telling us, I think, go do the legwork and come back with recommendations.
So could we, thank you for that clarification, Tom. So could we have someone move to approve our committee's support of the City of Winston-Salem staff to do that footwork, to do that research for partnering with Digital North Carolina? Could someone move for us to approve that?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Carlin, could you take the vote?
Chair Villa-Gomez,
Approve.
Vice Chair Pan,
Looks like she's gone.
yeah, Ms. Stark, Mr. LaRoy,
Carla, Ms. Dark put a message in chat saying she had to leave at 3.
Mr. LaRoy,
I approve.
Ms. Johnson,
Approve.
Ms. Williams,
Ms. Beverly, you're on mute.
I know, I approve.
and Ms. Wilson.
Approve.
That motion was approved. So, thank you. So it's my understanding then that our next steps would be that the staff would present the outcome of their research to our committee at our next meeting in August, and help, and whatever they give to us would help us to decide which partners we would prefer to move forward with. And is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Wanda, is that correct?
That is correct, and that'll be at your next meeting, which will be Wednesday, August 4th.
And at that point, then, after we've heard the outcome of the research, would we want to vote on, as a committee, who we would approve to partner with? Would it be pragmatic to do that in August?
I think so, yes. That would be a great next step.
So that would probably be one of our main priorities, then one of our most important items in August.
I agree.
Would it be helpful if we sent in those additional names like the archive and Tricultural Arts and Muse, any of those entities, so that as the staff is doing the research, we'll see what the other collaborations could be?
I think, Ms. Johnson, also that there is a list that's already established with the Digital North Carolina of the local partners that we could be with, who are already on Digital North Carolina.
And I think Ms. Williams also inserted, is there something that the Big Four Alumni Association could do with that process?
Well, it would help to know the exact requirements. So if we could get a list of all the requirements needed, then I can present it to the Big Four organization to see if they're even interested. I think they have valuable information that they could give But I have to know whether they will even qualify first.
I do know we have is it the Digital North Carolina website that you can just go in and pull down their partners?
Councilmember Scipio and Ms. Beverly, Ashley actually in the chat posted the list of the criteria that organizations have to meet in order to meet the Digital Forsyth criteria of cultural heritage institution. So if you can access the chat box and scroll up, you'll see those items listed, and then you can take that, and for anyone, not just you or anyone who may have community institutions that you are considering, if you use that list to kind of check off whether or not they qualify, so that when you submit that to staff, that's, we know if they check the boxes or not. So that then helps us kind of vet them in terms of what the recommendation is to council, or how we proceed with them, or whether they're even eligible to be considered.
Yes, and Ashley also posted a link to Digital NC for the institutions. I mean, that is there. If you look in the chat, you'll see that as well.
And that's the list of people that are organizations that are currently working with Digital NC.
Yes.
And you can zoom in, there's a map on there, so you can zoom in on Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, and see little markers so you can see which ones are local to us.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks, Keisha. Thanks.
Pleasure.
And so Chair Villagomez, that was it for the city staff updates. And I think we kind of segued into the next meeting date. And so just looking at the agenda, we've kind of skipped on.
Thank you, Wanda. I don't know what the first Wednesday is in August. Sorry, I don't have a calendar in front of me.
That is Wednesday, August 4th.
My birthday.
Yay.
Birthday. Barack Obama's too.
That's right.
So that will be our next meeting, Wednesday, August 4th. So we can move on to our 2-minute memories. And I have to say that one of my very favorite people in the whole world, who might not want me to name her, put this little bug in my ear, and I thought it was brilliant. That, of course, everyone who is on the committee who grew up in town has such a wealth of historical knowledge, and so conversation with that person really inspired me. So I hope that everyone on the committee will share a little 2-minute memory of whatever you want to talk about, from growing up and living in Winston-Salem. I didn't grow up here, so I think I'll go last. I have a few fun memories. Is there someone who would want to start off our 2-minute memories? And remember that then these oral histories will be collected in our minutes and in the recording of our meetings. So it's a whole nother great kind of archive for us for oral histories. Mr. Robert, do you want to start with a memory?
Sure. So one of the things that I remember about growing up in Winston-Salem was my mother worked in Caswell County. And so my father would take me to my grandmother's house on Monday, and I would stay with my grandmother until Friday. And what the really neat thing about that was my grandmother knew everybody in the neighborhood, and everybody knew her. Everybody knew everybody in those days. And so there wasn't anything that I could do that didn't get back to my grandmother's house before I did. sometimes that wasn't a good thing because my grandmother didn't really play. She had one rule, and the rule was do what I tell you to do. And that was that. But it made for a safe place because all of the folks who lived in that neighborhood were looking out for all of the kids in the neighborhood. And they would report back to our parents all those little things that we didn't want anybody to know that we were doing. And then our parents and our grandparents would settle up with us about that. And there was an informal level of supervision that the adults played in the neighborhood and ensured our safety. And that's the thing I remember most about growing up in Winston-Salem was we were safe. I was safe. And if anything amiss would show up, my grandmother and the other elders would make sure that got situated properly and quickly. And that was a great thing about being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What about Miss Beverly? Do you have a 2-minute memory to share with us?
Well, I don't know. I have plenty of memories and just wasn't quite prepared. But my mom is 97 years old and she's still active and she still lives by herself. And we had a little get together for the 4th of July, which was actually the 5th of July. But she brought her famous coconut cake. And we had 15 people over. And some of the people said, I remember Miss Funches from way back when. We grew up in Happy Hill Gardens. And they said, there were 5 of us children and the kids in the neighborhood. They said, I don't care what happened, what day it was. If I was hungry, your mama always fed us. She always made sure that no child would go hungry. And I think that's something I've carried on in my adult life. If there is an opportunity for me to help some child, then I'm there. That's one of my memories. I have lots of them, Just give me a minute, I'll write them down. I'll be prepared to speak on them next time.
Yeah, it's our hope we'll have this at the end of each one of our monthly meetings, but that's a beautiful. Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Ms. Johnson, I know you have hundreds of wonderful memories, but do you have one you would like to share with us today?
She's going to.
She maybe had to step away. What about Miss Annette? Miss Wilson, do you have a memory?
Sure. Reflecting upon just growing up in the neighborhood, as Mr. Dura alluded to, and as Ms. Williams alluded to, the neighborhood was such an integral part in our lives in that we all did look out for each other. But the neighborhood, what I remember was that there was the Graham Avenue Love Thy Neighbor Club. They met monthly in homes. It was, I think it was a weekday meeting. It wasn't a weekend meeting. They prepared meals. They conducted their business. And as children in whatever house, was hosting, it was just a pleasure to have company in your house and to be a part of, because you could sit in the meeting, you couldn't say anything, but you could sit in the meeting. And these neighborhood associations planned for us a yearly trip. And it was a bus trip that would leave from your neighborhood. Just imagine a bus pulling up on Graham Avenue, but we would load up at the bottom, I believe it was Graham and 8th is where it would pull up. And then we would have a one-day trip. We went to places like Lakeside, Tweetsie Railroad, all of that. And we look forward to that annual trip because for some of us growing up then, that was the only really out-of-town vacation you had. It was just a one-day experience, but it was a neighborhood experience. We packed our lunches, and I always just recollect that Back then, people could cook on Sunday mornings, leave their dinner out. It didn't spoil. It was ready because you didn't do a lot of cooking on Sunday. So sometimes they even cooked on Saturdays or early before we went to church. And then you came back and you had family dinner. But just the whole neighborhood concept that they worked together to plan something that we all could benefit from as a community of children. And while it said Graham, there were the neighborhood reached beyond Graham because you had people from Jackson Avenue and Gray and Rich and Cameron who all would participate in this yearly neighborhood trip.
Yeah. Thank you. That's beautiful too. Well, I'll share my memory. I will say that when I moved to City of Winston-Salem in 2000 to take a tenure track history position at Wake Forest, I often felt like sort of a fish out of water in that part of town. And especially the MLK and Winston-Salem State, that area just always drew me. And so I would find myself driving over there. And then when I finally came to Winston-Salem State and moved there in 2006, walked onto campus and walked into my first classroom full of beautiful Black students, I felt at home. And for me, I felt so safe, as Mr. Roberts said. I felt the safest I'd ever felt in the city. And it literally, for me, felt like walking into church. So I found my way. And as Dr. Shirley Manigault said to me years ago, I came to Wake Forest, but it was really to come over to Winston-Salem State and then to join the African-American community. So I'm glad to be adopted into the community. It's wonderful. So thank you all for sharing your memories. And we look forward to many more wonderful memories as we move forward. I believe we have time for any other items. I don't have any other issues or items to discuss, but if anyone has something to bring up, I believe we could have a few minutes for that. Any updates from the subcommittees or any other thoughts to share or suggestions?
I see Ms. Johnson is back. Maybe she can share a memory.
Ah, yes. Ms. Johnson, would you like to share a memory of growing up and living?
I've shared today already, but they're all good memories. Even those that some would think would be difficult, but our community taught us richness and did not teach us that what we had was not valuable. Even those persons who you may have thought were, and others may have felt that have nothing to add to the community, they were the best of whatever they were. So it was that they did their best. And that's the gem, I think, from our community. When I think about the whole conversation we had earlier about what's slum, what's ghetto, it's in the eye of the beholder and it was the authoritative piece that came out that people could decide what would happen to communities when we had limited power to say. So what for some communities is a slum or blight, for other communities with the same kinds of environment is historic. So, it's what we revere in our communities, the richness that was there, the camaraderie, as Mr. Dura talked about, and Ms. Williams talked about. It's no child was left behind. When I think about our school system, I'm gonna stop talking because there was a piece on, I think it's a school in Mississippi, perhaps, that has this whole piece about vocational training. It's like, hey, we did that 50 years ago because you either had an academic track or you had a vocational track. But when you graduated from high school, you graduated from Atkins High School on Cameron Avenue, you knew what you were going to do without question. So it's the richness and the history that we bring. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful. So are there any last issues, thoughts, suggestions?
I just want to thank the staff again for all the support they give our committee. When I participated working at the Juneteenth table, it was just, first of all, we had just received our newsletter, but the newsletter was very well received by the individuals that picked it up. I want to thank you again for your support of that. That helped kind of bridge the gap, I think, for a lot of people in the community with what we're about. So thank you all for the support that you give this committee.
Yeah, thank you for noting that, Ms. Annette. There was so much interest in the newsletter. I think we passed all of them out, and again, all the city staff. Jamie, I didn't mention her earlier, but she was there with us as well, and really tried to reach out and just bring people over so we could share and let them see the newsletter and talk to people from the community about what we're doing. So thank you for noting that, Ms. Annette. So if we have no other items or suggestions, then I would ask that someone would move to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you. Ms. Carlin, could you take the vote?
Chair Villa-Gomez,
Approve.
Vice Chair Penn, Mr. Dara,
Approve.
Ms. Johnson,
Adios.
Ms. Williams,
Yes, I agree.
and Ms. Wilson.
Approve.
So we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Goodbye.